Hey you guys. So I am in week 12 of my semester. Finished clinical like a few weeks ago, like I was saying in that last video. And so this week I actually started my new job orientation. I'll be working on a inpatient rehab floor. Um, so um, I'm saying all that to say that today I kind of wanted to kind of rewind back and also give some tips to those people who are actually thinking of becoming a nurse, but they are not yet a nurse. So instead of like the NP stuff today, I kind of just wanted to talk about those who are interested in the nursing field, and just may want some other information or some tips. So, as you guys may have seen in my previous videos, I've been a registered nurse for like almost 4 years. Yeah, almost 4 years. I started off at a cardiac step down floor, and the hospital that I was at was in Detroit. Pretty, I would say it was a pretty fast paced floor and a pretty sick population of people too. So, I mean, it was a good experience. But anyway, I would definitely recommend anybody who is considering becoming a nurse or if they're in school for nursing. I think that it's a really good idea to kind of just get your feet wet, like become a nurse aide or, even a sitter or something like that where you're working with like patients, doing some kind of patient care, so that for one you can kind of get used to working in that environment and actually physically get used to the basic stuff like dealing with family members, dealing with people who are really sick sometimes, or dealing with people who can't do really that much for themselves. The basics of like learning how to do blood pressures, learning how to document some things, learning how to gain those organizational skills, time management skills, and things like that. Because anytime you're taking care of patients, that's a very major thing, regardless of if you're a nurse or an aide or a tech or whatever. So that's my first tip. I would definitely recommend try if you can. It's not always possible for people, but try if you can to get some experience in the healthcare field. It doesn't hurt. Then you can kind of see as well like how other roles positions are. So like when you become a nurse, if you've been a nurse aide before, you kind of know like, okay, I know what this person has to do, or I know the responsibilities that they have on their plate, and you just have that understanding, which is always helpful. So yeah, definitely get some healthcare experience if you can. And then I went to a 4-year school, but what I will tell people is if you just have the opportunity to get an associate's degree, most places, the associate's degree nurses and the bachelor degree nurses, really the pay does not differ very much, if at all, in some places. Okay, a lot of places the pay may not even differ at all. If you get an associate's degree and you are able to do that and you find it is cheaper and that's the opportunity that comes your way first, by all means, do it. Do it. If you can get a job that will pay for you to get your bachelor's degree, because I know, as an example, the facility that I'm going to be working at, they do tuition reimbursement, or they pay up to 70% of people's schooling to become a bachelor degree nurse, as opposed to, from their associates. So if you can get somebody to pay for as much of your schooling as possible, by all means, like, do that. Or even if you became an LPN first and did like usually they do like a year of training, if you did that and then went back to get your RN and just gradually increase yourself forward, if you can get people to pay for your schooling, that is very important, because Unfortunately, I am very much in debt, a whole lot in debt actually, because I went straight for the bachelor's degree, and then now I'm back in graduate school, so a whole bunch of debt, whole bunch of debt. You know, when really a lot of facilities want you to advance and they want their institutions to look better. So if they have more educated nurses, it looks good for them. So it's a win-win. So they usually will, you know, a lot of places will reimburse your education. So keep those things in mind when you are considering starting a program as well. So that's my next thing that I, you know, would give a tip to. If you have an opportunity to do your 2-year degree, you know, it really doesn't hurt to do that, because associate degree nurses can work in the hospitals right along with bachelor degree nurses, and they do the same job a lot of the times. So that's another thing. Also, I would say, and this kind of goes with the first thing that I was saying, if you have some healthcare experience, it's always very helpful for like when you interview for nursing positions and things like that. But another thing to think about when you do gain healthcare experience is maybe I can transfer from my nurse tech or nurse aide position and I can work as a nurse at the same company. It might not be the same unit, but it may be the same company. Because for me, when I was in nursing school, I worked as a tech, and then I actually got a job before I graduated. So I had an interview, got a job offer and everything before I even passed my boards, at the same exact hospital that I was working at as a tech, but it was just a different floor. So that is very useful. You know, you have to think about that stuff as well when you are going along your journey. Another thing I would say, I'm just gonna overload you guys on tips and stuff that I, you know, wish I may have paid more attention to, or, you know, just stuff that I feel like people should know. For those people who have already started a nursing program, just get as much as you can from things. Like when you go to clinicals or you're in a lecture, it might be kind of boring, some of the stuff, and some of it, you know, I will admit you ain't never gonna really see too much of later on as an actual like nurse working on the floor. But when it comes to certain things, especially if you're like thinking of advancing further, like for nurse practitioner, things like that, try to pay as much attention to things as you can and get as much as you can out of those clinical experiences, because when you're in clinical, you have somebody there to kind of like supervise and guide you along the way. Once you become a nurse, yes, you do get an orientation, but it's expected that you just know certain things. So you just want to be as prepared as possible. And depending on what hospital you are at and how their staffing is and all that, you know, sometimes you may not get, you know, a whole bunch of like weeks for an orientation. At my first nursing job, started off doing cardiac. My first nursing job, I can't remember exactly how long I was in orientation. It might have been like 8 weeks or something to that effect. But, I mean, it was just very fast paced, you know, and so as soon as I was off orientation, like my first day, I will never forget this, my first day off of orientation, I had a patient that needed a blood transfusion, multiple blood transfusions. The lady was, you know, it was a confused patient, and IV was pulled out. So that was like that was literally like my first day off orientation. So just keep in mind, try to get as much as you can get out of, you know, your clinical experiences, because once you off orientation, especially like once you're actually like a nurse and stuff at your first job, you know, you know, it's not gonna be a slow thing. You're gonna kind of have to get thrown in there and you do as best you can. You'll still hopefully have very good coworkers. I did have coworkers that, you know, were helpful and everything and would try to be there for me as much as they could. But then at the end of the day, it's like, okay, we all got our own set of patients. So you're responsible for however many patients you're responsible for. At my facility that I was at before, another thing was that they rotated charge nurse. So I think I was there maybe 4 months. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 months or something before they had me in charge. Came in one day, I see my name on the list that says Lauren is in charge, and I'm like panicking, honestly, because I wasn't expecting it to be that soon. But as charge on my floor at that time, we had to come up with the schedule for the 11 p.m. people, make the schedule for the 7 a.m. people. We had to delegate who was going to take what admissions, and then if it went around the whole thing, then we would actually have to take an admit as well. Anything that was like abnormal that happened on the floor, you know, if a patient fell or something like that, you know, I mean, we had to kind of look over that whole situation. It was a lot. It was really a lot, which is really, honestly, you'll find that every facility is different. So I know I'm kind of going all over the place here, but you know, I'm just speaking from experience and things like that. So that's why I say try to get as much as you can from your clinicals, because once you're out as a nurse, it's like you are, you know, you in the real world now, and it's kind of scary. I was scared to death. I was scared to death for a long time, and I'm scared again. But you know, it's a good experience overall, and it's well worth it when you do finally graduate and become a nurse. Let's see, another thing I would say to those who are going to school for nursing or plan to, when you graduate, some people already know exactly what it is that they want to do. I, on the other hand, when I graduated, I just was like, I kind of just went with the flow. There was some things that I said I wasn't going to do, and I probably discussed this in my other, like my first video. But when I was in school, and we went over cardiac, and we went over the community health in our last semester, in my head, was like, I don't ever want to do cardiac or public health. Like, why? I don't want to do that. And those are the two places that I ended up. So I ended up cardiac first, and then I ended up in public health, which I actually really love. But because of my school schedule and things like that, I could no longer do that how I would have liked to. But just realize, you know, some people know what they want to do when they get done, and it's very okay if you don't. It's very okay if you go to a floor and you just really aren't feeling it and you just really don't like it like that. That was my first experience. I honestly did not like cardiac that much. I grew a love for it because it was the very first thing that I did. So I always have a love for cardiac because that was the first thing that I did as a nurse. But you'll learn over time what you want to do, and don't hesitate to switch or to even have contingent jobs. Some people will work multiple jobs, and they'll work part-time somewhere, and then they'll work contingent somewhere else so that they get their feet wet in multiple places. That's up to you, you know, depending on the type of person that you are. What I will say, though, is this. If you really want to gain confidence and really push yourself and get those assessment skills and the documentation and the time management skills and the seeing different conditions or, you know, problems that people experience, start off in acute care. I mean, they usually recommend like a year of medical surgical experience. But even cardiac floors, like what I was on, I thought that was a very good first experience to have. But what I will say, and they tell people usually a year because a lot of places will want you to have at least a year in acute care experience. I did not. I had almost a year. I was just like shy of a year. I think it was about 10 months I had gotten before I switched over to doing public health stuff. But I would say this. If you just really don't like, your unit, I would say try other units in the hospital first, or try to hang on to a contingent position at your job in acute care if you're going to go to anything that is not acute care related. Because what I did was I left my job in acute care. I went to public health doing vaccines and doing STD testing, which I had no clue about at the time, and now I feel very knowledgeable in that area. So it was great experience when it comes to that and working with the community, or even learning about different insurances and how all that works and how grants work and things like that. But now that I'm starting my other job, now I'll be back in the hospital, and a lot of the stuff that I started off doing when I first graduated from nursing school, I haven't done in like almost 3 years. So starting IVs, I haven't done in a long time. Working with PICC lines, I haven't done that in a minute. Even just working with IV pumps. I mean, quite honestly, I wasn't even doing patient assessments at my job. I have been for school, but I hadn't been at my job, because really what we do is strictly like a questioning, asking a lot of questions about things to get information, to determine like treatment for whatever STD, or if somebody has some side effects with shots or things like that. So I don't want to say I lost my skills, but I'm very rusty on a lot of my skills. So think about that stuff before you are very quick to leave an acute care setting. And realize that you may have a bad experience on one floor or at one facility, but switching facilities may even be better for you. You might find that you may get a whole different orientation experience, a whole different educational experience. You may have different staff that are better to work with. Just realize that not all experiences may be bad for you if you had a first bad experience, because that's what my experience kind of was kind of bad. It wasn't the greatest experience for me personally. So keep those things in mind before you are so quick to leave acute care and go to something else. Now, some people know that they just never, ever, ever want to do anything in the hospital or acute care, and I mean, that's okay. But if you're going to be like a nurse practitioner in the future, it's very important to me to really, really, really get those assessment skills down, and if you're working in the hospital, you're going to get all that. You're going to get your assessment skills. You're going to learn about those lab values better than you would if you were working at a job like what I was recently working at, which was the health department. So keep those things in mind for your future when you are choosing jobs. And even now, what I will say too is, always just have the future in mind as a new nurse, as a seasoned nurse, or whatever, but mainly for the new nurses. Always have the future in mind. Realize that some of the things that you are not thinking that you may want to do right now, you very well may change your mind in the future. You may find out some things that you like about nursing, like some areas that you like that you might want to do. But keep the future in mind, and even job opportunities in mind. Because I will say this too, at this facility that I will be working at, it's a very, very large health system here in Michigan. I don't really like to divulge names and stuff because I'd be kind of paranoid, but it's a big system, and there's a lot of urgent cares, a lot of outpatient clinics that they have too. And so that my thought process was, okay, I could be working here as a nurse, gain more skills and experience that I may have kind of feel rusty on now. But I can also have the ability to advance as a nurse practitioner somewhere else within the same system. And it will be easier for me to get a job as a nurse practitioner because I'll already be internal within the system. So there's a lot of things that you should just think about, your nursing school journey and then your journey after you graduate. Because nursing school, we all know, or for those who don't yet, nursing school itself is a journey. But then when you graduate, you're like, oh my gosh, I done graduated. like now I'm really about to be out here, and it really becomes real really fast. So, you know, just keep in mind your future things. Another thing that I would say is for the NCLEX. I personally, you know, some people might disagree, but this is my personal opinion. Take that NCLEX. Don't wait a year to take your NCLEX. You know, start preparing before you even graduate, because most programs, if they're a good program, are going to be trying to prepare you for the boards before you graduate, because they want their pass rates to look high. So start preparing for that before you graduate, and take it very, very soon after you graduate. You know, I mean, I would say the maximum time to give yourself is 6 months, and that's even if that, to be honest, because you're used to still thinking in that testing mode. So just try to take it when you're still in that same mind frame and just get it out the way. Kaplan Q Bank helped me. Some people, actually a lot of people disagree with me on that. A lot of people say Kaplan was not helpful for them. So I honestly couldn't give any other resources as far as like what really helped me, because Kaplan Q Bank is really all that I use for the most part, and like my schooling stuff. We did a lot of ATI because we had to, we were forced to. So ATI is helpful, but it's, to me, a little bit more difficult than the actual NCLEX. Kaplan Q Bank, what I really liked about it is that all I would do each day to study was answer questions after question after question after question. It looked the whole outline of that website looks a lot like the actual NCLEX test. So it wasn't a culture shock to me when I sat for my actual test. And, you know, after you look at so many rationales and strategies and things like that, and you get used to the same things, you know, even though nobody's test is going to be like the same, but once you get used to answering questions in that mindset, to me, that was really helpful. And that's how I studied. And I graduated. I think it was May the 2nd I graduated. I want to say I took my test like might have been like May the 20th, like May 20th or something, or it might have been it was either May 11th or sometime May 20th, somewhere around there. And you know, I did everything very quick because I kind of didn't have a choice. I had a job and I needed to pass my boards in order for me to start in June. Not saying to pressure yourself like that is very good, but, you know, at that point, I just didn't have a choice. So I would say, though, you know, to me, everything was still kind of fresh in my head, and it worked out for me. So I just really don't recommend people to wait too long to take your test. You know, give yourself more credit. You done went through like 2 years of nursing school or 4 years of nursing school, whatever. And you have some knowledge that you may not even know that you have, but have the confidence in yourself. Study up on the vital things. Know your strategies. Realize you're not going to know 100% of anything, anywhere that you go or do, any test that you take. And sit for your test sooner than later to get it out the way. Other than that, I think that's pretty much it. Last thing, because I know this is like a real long video, but I will just give you guys a little thing that I took with me from today that I'm gonna continue to take with me really forever. It's just, we had a lady who was doing part of our orientation. She said her mom was very sick. She was in the hospital, and this is another nurse. She's a nurse educator. Mom was very sick in the hospital. She passed maybe some years ago, but her dad is now very sick. And she, at the very end of our orientation, said, you know, find your common with people, because we all have more in common with each other than we may ever know sometimes. But find something that you have in common with your patients, or actually sit down and talk to your patients, you know, get to know them. And I know it's hard because we get caught up with the clinical stuff that we got to do, or all the tasks that we have to complete, and it can be challenging. But if you can be a friendly face and a approachable person, and just make somebody feel comfortable with you and just feel better, that 12 hours on your shift, that's going to make a really, really, really big difference in the experience that they're going to have and how they're going to feel in the hospital. So just take with you that as a nurse, yes, we learn all these skills and all these tasks that we have to chart and all these things that we have to do. But don't forget that nursing is really a people profession, and try to just, you know, show the care that you would want somebody to give your family and friends, because nursing is a science, but it is an art as well. So keep that in mind and never lose that throughout your clinical practice, no matter if you're busy or whatever, because we know stuff happens as a nurse, but keep those things in mind and do not ever lose that when you're dealing with your patients, because I think personally that we are in a blessing profession. So just never forget that. And that's pretty much it.